What up?
Hey, everybody. Happy Monday.
Whoa. My phone is still on, apparently.
Was that Jarvis?
It
that
was
I heard?
Jarvis.
It
That
was
is Jarvis.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. So it is Monday. It is the first Monday in June. So that happened.
Yep, that was fast, man. Crap, May went quick.
It went real quick. I don't understand it, but
And then all we got is 2 more months, and then we got season 2. I'm excited.
yes, I am very excited. But right now, we are going to watch episode 5.
It's Noman Garden. What up?
Hi, Nomi Garden of
Crystal.
The Last of Us, and we are being joined by Aleron King.
Kong.
Look at that. Kong. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, Al.
It happens all the time. Nobody expects the black to have Kong.
I mean, so here's the thing. My last name is Adomanis. It messes people up. Nobody thinks that maybe I'm married into it or anything. They're just real confused.
I mean, the whole thing is Aleron Kiyonori Koyoshi Kong, so it's a whole damn thing.
I'm glad you didn't give me that to say.
No.
So is that Japanese, Chinese?
My mom's half Japanese,
Korean?
half black. My dad's half Chinese, half Jamaican. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, a little bit of everything.
Nice.
A little smattering all over the place.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I miss every time I hear anyone mention anything Jamaican, I just get a deep craving for the Jamaican beef patties from the bodega that I used to get every single day by my old job in New York, and now that's all I want again.
I'm going to tell you a secret. Those were frozen from Korea.
Hey man, I don't care.
Yeah,
I don't even care at this point. They were delicious, and I can't find them here. Like whatever they are at this point, I just want them in my face.
Juicy patty. That's what you gotta look up. It'll be good.
Juicy patties. All right, I gotta see where they. I'm gonna write that down right now. I gotta see where they get that.
Yes, but we need to focus.
All right, focus. Food though, man, it's good. All right.
I know. I agree.
So, Aleron Kong, author of the fantastically amazing series, The Land. I love that series so much. Like,
thank you so much, bro. Appreciate it.
It's not like legit though. Like if you like gaming at all, like it just scratches that itch of like RPG gaming, like old school JRPGs, but also like I don't want to spoil anything, but the main character gets like an area that he kind of controls after a little while, and like he builds it like it's fucking like Animal Crossing. Like he's like, but I put a blacksmith over here, and it's like it just scratches that itch. It's so great. I like reading it. I'm just like I feel like I'm controlling him, and like I want to play this game right now.
Well, that's a rave review. So yeah, that sounds good.
It's fantastic, man. I really do enjoy it, and I've recruited a lot of people down here to it because I was reading it in a game store, like a board gaming store.
Yeah.
And I would be sitting there during the day reading it because I half worked there for a little while, and people would be like, "What are you reading?" And then I would talk about it for like an hour and a half.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yeah. What up, Arosa?
Hey, Arosa.
So if you like it's a lit RPG let me get the banner up with your website on it. You got links to all the social medias on there. Go and check it out. The Land. The first book is right here. So
it's a really good cover.
Yeah, it's
Thank
great.
you.
So much fun.
Like 30 minutes with my new cover artist about how you got to take time for the little things, little nuances that people. I honestly feel like MTV would still be super popular if they had kept playing music videos because it's a lost art form. They were so awesome when we were growing up. Yeah.
Instead of like the reality, like semi-reality TV show.
Yeah, whatever other trash is
nonsense.
Yeah, exactly.
Scripted reality TV. The the book also has lots of, since it's like a kind of like an urban fantasy in the sense of that it takes place-ish in our world. There's a lot of like references of pop culture and stuff like that, and because this is Dragonmount, you do reference Wheel of Time a little bit. I won't tell anybody how, but there's a little couple little breadcrumbs in there from Wheel of Time.
Well, now I need everybody to read it and then come back and tell us what they what the breadcrumbs are.
You guys are so flattering.
Oh man, no. Anyway, so you were a surgeon?
Yes, tell me about this.
No.
Doctor?
Surgeons are the devil. Yes,
Okay.
I am a medical doctor.
Okay.
Real kind. I went to medical school. I went through my residency here at Grady at Morehouse, and then I worked for Kaiser for 5 years, working nights. And when you're working nights, it's like when you're on, you're going. But when you're off, you can be sitting there for like 8 hours at a time, just sort of during your shift. So I actually started writing the books because I felt like I needed an emotional balance after I got out of residency, because that sucked as hard as it's possible to suck. And so I started writing these books, never intending anybody to ever read them because I knew nothing about the publishing industry. But I was like, okay, this would be a fun psychological exercise. And then I found Lit RPG right when I was thinking about it. And at that time, there were only like 5 or 6 books for sale in the US. So I started writing the books. It went really, really fast. I wrote the first book in 6 weeks. I wrote the first 6 books in 14 months. And also I noticed that there was no social media about it. So I created that. It was a platform for me to do better, but I also opened it up for other authors to do better. That way, if they found them, then they found me. And if they found me, they found them. And that's sort of how like the culture sort of evolved. And now I'm about to put my 10th book out this summer, and it's been a fun time. It's been about 5-6 years. Yeah.
That is amazing.
And you got to sit on a panel with Brandon Sanderson at DragonCon.
That was so cool. Yeah.
That was freaking awesome.
I met Sanderson first time at JordanCon, and I literally touched his face. And I was like, I'm still touching your face. And he goes, this happens. And I'm like, okay. And then I was so like mortified. The next day I was like, yo, Brando, what's up, man? How you doing? Like, he's like, I don't buy it at all. But as you guys know, he's like one of the nicest human beings.
He is.
You know?
He really is.
Yeah.
He is. I gave him a spelling bee at JordanCon once for Dragon Mount's anniversary. That was my task, was to pull words from the Wheel of Time to see if he could just spell them on the fly. And he could not spell
He could not?
He could not spell some of them.
I'm not surprised. That's whatchamacallit, his being a nice person made wrangling him at JordanCon sometimes a little difficult.
Well, yeah, I can imagine, because he wanted to talk to everybody.
Well, I mean, like, whether he wants to or not, I don't know. I mean, he seems genuinely enthusiastic when people talk to him in the hallways, but he'll never be like, all right, I have to leave now, like, ever.
Right.
Yeah, that was my experience, because I was waiting outside of his big convention hall for him to come out. And I'm out there for like 15 minutes. I'm like, oh my God, I must have missed him. He went back. And I walk in, and he's just patiently talking to like 7 people that are in a row, just doing whatever. And honestly, I feel like that's how you know like somebody is just like generally cool. They said the same thing about Michelle Obama. When she talks to you, there will be like dignitaries around, but she's zeroed in on you. Like, she's very much so. Yeah. He's a cool dude. And obviously he broke the internet. Like,
forget it.
Year. So I mean, forget about it.
Well, you've broken Audible a couple times.
I actually have broken Audible. I actually had a VP at Audible call me and say, please tell your fans to stop calling and yelling at our people. We're trying to get it back up as quickly as possible, because when my 7th book came out, so many people downloaded it at once, and it was such a massive book. It was 46 hours. It shut down Audible for about 4 hours.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It's kind of fun. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, hold on, guys.
It's okay. It's okay.
It won't go away. I can hear us, and I don't want to hear us.
Welcome to my life.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah, okay. I was about to say, I could just.
Sorry.
I got the power on this side.
I mean, you should have just muted me. Is what?
That's fine. The audio books are also fantastic. I don't know what it is about me. I can't read, like, I can't do audiobooks as a first time through a book. I got to read it, but I really enjoyed, like, I don't put on music that often, like when I'm doing stuff. It's usually an audiobook or like a movie or something, like, and I have it on like in the background, and then I'm doing whatever I'm doing. And I forgot who the narrator is for the series.
Podell.
That's all right. Okay.
Yeah.
He's great.
He's amazing.
Yeah,
Nick
really
Podell is absolutely amazing. And it's actually interesting because he wasn't my first narrator, because I have ADD. Undiagnosed, but it's definitely there.
I got diagnosed like 6 months ago. Again.
Yeah. I like have never sat through listening to audiobooks. I'm like, yeah, this is just not my jam. So I didn't even really think to do it when I became a writer. But I knew this other author that was like, hey man, you're really leaving money on the table. You need to get on this. And I'm like, okay. So I just sort of looked around and interviewed various people, and I was like, well, how can I make this happen? And found someone, and like I would get a lot of accolades after it was done. People are like, "Oh my god, I really loved your book." And I'm like, "Oh, what did you think of the narrative?" It was fine. I'm like, "That's not enough." So I reached out to all these different people that were my fans. I'm like, "Well, who do you love?" And they threw out like Will Wheaton and all these other people. And I'm like, "Well, I made a list." And I just started reaching out, and I reached out to Nick, and he blew me away when he like read for me. But I was like, "Hey man, I just want to be really clear. It's very important to me that I work well with someone, that we make something better, greater than the sum of our parts, that we are really pouring our hearts in this, and that doesn't work. I don't care how great you are. Like, I'm out of here." I feel like I was like talking to a hot chick, and I'm like, "And I got standards," and da da da. And he was just like, "Well, just so you know, it's important that we work together." And now we like send each other Christmas cards, and
that's great.
And I'm so lucky to work with him. I honestly believe there's a big difference between a narrator and an audio performer, and he just blows them out of the water. He's amazing.
He does. Yeah. He has little nuances to his voice that he changes for the different characters. Like he doesn't like full on do like impersonations or whatever, but like he changes his voice for the different characters, and they feel like different characters when he does it.
Yeah, I almost like it was actually when I'm writing a book that he's going to be narrating, I take out the sentence enders, like he said, they thought, because it's like you don't need it when he's being so like he's being so true to each voice. It almost takes you out of the suspension of disbelief. But then we also like we're doing like a bunch of stuff. Like it's very common now to add sound effects in audiobooks, especially. I think Lit RPG kind of like paved the way for that. But I was one of the first ones, and I remember talking to people at Audible, and they're like, "Yeah, this isn't going to work. We don't do this. No sound effects, da da da." And now it's become standard, and that's something that Nick and I put in together. We were like one of the very first books that like sort of got their higher charts that were doing that, which is kind of just been a wild ride. Yeah.
Who? What was the narrator's last name again? Nick
Podell. Nick Podell.
Nick Podell. That was a roast. One of our longtime watchers here, Arosa. They started reading The Wheel of Time after the show came out and blew through the books in like a month and a half, 2 months, and they've been hanging out with us since we started doing this.
You can do that once all the books have been published. You don't have to pull it out over decades because you're waiting on stuff. I'm a little salty, Arosa, but it's okay.
Yeah, I'm a little salty about it, and then I get like a little excited because you get to like follow along.
Yes, I do. But I love talking to first-time readers. Yeah. But like I can't say anything because I don't know what happens where in the books, like what book things happen in, and I don't want to spoil it, so I just listen.
No, whenever I do those first time reader shows, I have to like crazy like right before the show. I got to like check, like read the synopsises of like the books before and after, just real quick, just to make sure like the big points I don't accidentally mention.
Yeah, because after Eye of the World, that is all one book to me. That is one really long book.
Speaking of The Wheel of Time, have you seen the show? And what are some quick thoughts if you have any, if you've seen it?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen it. I thought I feel like when I was at Jordan Con, everyone was sort of like, I wish they had rolled out a bigger budget for this show like they have for others.
And more episodes.
Yeah. But for what they had, I thought they did it really, really well. I mean, not to poo-poo on Rings of Power, but it almost felt like esoteric the way actually reading Tolkien today is a little esoteric. And it's like they were trying to be too true to that as opposed to finding a way to tell the story that actually connects with people. Whereas I feel like The Wheel of Time was definitely trying to connect. I wish it had been grittier just because I like grittier shows like Paddington Fane. I would love to see like a bigger exploration of like just how evil and whatever he is.
I think we're going to get it. Yeah. I think we're going to get it. Yeah.
Yeah. We got that one still image of the Murdrell nailed to the door during the season 2 teaser reel. So like, I'm hoping.
So, I mean, it was cool. I don't really understand why there were certain departures as far as like, using various things, like dealing with the rings and stuff like that. But I'm honestly not the kind of person that's like a Nazi about like, it has to be 100% true to the books because it's a different kind of art form. Like,
yes.
like I'm happy it exists. as opposed to like whining about it all the time. Just be like, hey, I'd actually like to see something a little bit better, as opposed to and don't try to like burn down the franchise.
That's
yes, because that is what normal people do, Al.
Yes.
That is a normal response.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, like Picard, like it's not always great, but how happy am I to see Patrick Stewart out there again? It's amazing. I'm really happy that it exists. Like whatever. Yeah.
And getting to see Worf in season 3 has been
that
great.
was amazing.
Oh
like
my
all
God.
the comebacks for season 3 were clutch. Like I would love for them to make him just like a spoof, like slightly spoofy, like somewhat like Star Trek: The Next Generation meets the Orville with just the old cast. Like I would love to see something like that. Yeah.
The Orville was actually fantastic. Like
So I haven't watched that, but Brian keeps saying we should because people say it's good. And
the first couple of episodes, like I watched the first couple episodes and I was like, I don't know if I like this because it was like too like ridiculous. Like it felt like they dialed up the comedy like way too much. Like it felt shticky. And then all of a sudden it's like, this is a fantastic science fiction show and it's hilarious.
They really did some really great stuff with it.
I will add that to the list of things I will watch after Avi becomes an adult.
Speaking of science fiction-esque shows, The Last of Us. Did you play the game at all, or are you just a show person?
I didn't. I know about the controversy that came out, which again just sort of felt like, oh my God, you guys have a life. Can you shut up?
Touch grass. Like what was the controversy that you saw?
I mean, so I never really but basically what I got is that wasn't there some sort of outcry about like the gender of the character or like that it was a same-sex kind of thing or something
Yeah, because Bella Ramsey or Ellie is a gay in season 2, but isn't she gay in the game?
I mean
in the later episodes.
She's got mushroom people after her.
Yeah,
it's really irrelevant.
Why is that a problem? Like, you're not going to have sex with her anyway. She's a made-up character. Who cares?
Yeah.
And also
it's
14.
like being like, mermaids aren't black. I mean, like, come on, guys.
Mermaids also aren't real.
They're also not real. Like
the sentence is mermaids aren't. That's it. That's the whole sentence. Mermaids.
But honestly, I get it because like there are entire Reddit groups. Everyone's looking me up. There are entire Reddit groups devoted to hating me and like just drama for days. And I'm like, guys, I read about like elf pits and fireballs. Like I should not have a nemesis. Like this is not beef. Like where did you grow up that you think this is a thing? But yeah, no, people are there's a lot of weirdos out there. And honestly, and I think keyboard, it's funny. I actually think about like, if you went back like 500 years, it'd be like, oh, there's this thing that fits in our pocket and it's a compendium of human knowledge. They'd be like, you guys must be the smartest people ever. Like, nah, we went the other way.
I will say, I don't think we went the other way. We just gave everybody access. And that was...
That's the problem. See, I agree with you, but then when you say something that you're like, and that's what most totalitarian regimes also do. It's like, it's not that I'm wrong. But
so people take...
I see what's happening here.
So here's the thing. People take some very valid and logical like reasoning and go too far.
They go way too far. I agree.
They go too far with it.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes from a movie is, 28 Days Later. Because they're about to go under, they're escaping the zombie, city, and they're about to go under the tunnel, and it's the pitch black tunnel. And like one guy goes, "No, this is a shit idea because it's obviously a shit idea." Like just like it's so dumb, I can't come up with the words to explain it because it's so obviously dumb. We shouldn't do this, and that's where I think we get into problems as smart people. It's like, well, I can't make myself dumb enough to respond to that. So maybe you're right. No, they're just still wrong.
Yeah, Elliot Page was the model for the original character, so that could have been also adding to the drama that the neckbeards were throwing around about the game too, because they went through transition and are now are Elliot Page now. So trans people exist, and it's not bad when they are on television sometimes. Like, relax, people are
And hetero people are much more of a danger.
Yeah,
by the numbers.
Yeah, just
by far.
Yeah, by and large, like we should be afraid of white dudes between the ages of 17 and 36, like the most.
I mean, I cross the street when I see him.
When I was in school, it's like every new freshman crop that would come. like it'd be like, you know, a bunch of white girls, and they'd be very afraid of the black guys until they'd been around for about 2 months. And then suddenly they were like, oh, yeah, they're in that frat. Will you walk us home, please? Because Rapey McRaperson and his senator dad are making me uncomfortable. And it's like, yeah, you kind of start figuring it out. Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't have to. Yeah, no, we got to jump into the episode. Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm kind of glad I didn't. I lost. I had a scholarship to go to Ohio State and for football, but I ended up having an issue, and I'm kind of glad I never got caught up in that like Greek stuff, because like they started reaching out to us like when we first got. I went to their camps. And like when I was in my junior and my going into my sophomore and my junior year, and it was bad. Like they were already bad.
I will say neither of my kids did any of that at Ohio State. They just went to school, they got their degrees, they kept it moving.
No. I mean, it's like you said, it's not like humanity as a whole is evil. No. It's just that today 5 people sound like 50,000.
Well, I was just going to say the bad ones are usually the loudest.
The loudest, yeah, absolutely. All right. So as normal, I have my timer on the screen. It is the correct amount of time, not like I used to do when it would run only for 45 minutes. This episode is not an hour and a half like episode 3 was. I think it's only like 57 minutes,
something like that. I
yeah,
think
without
a little under an hour.
Yeah, we're gonna let the recap play. So if you don't skip the recap, and if you get a commercial, just catch up by following along with the timer. And
Al, make sure your show is muted or turned down real low, because we don't want. It's muted. Okay, because we don't want Max coming after us.
Yeah, we don't need whatever. What is? Are they still owned by AT&T? I don't know.
I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, Disney owns all of us.
Yeah, we don't need them. We don't need that smoke. So
yes, we do that.
All right. That should have given people who want to queue up enough time. So I'm going to get ready here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and go. All right. So, what do you think of the So one of the big things that they changed, so what do you think about this part is that they basically, because it's television and you want to see these characters and you can't have them acting with gas masks on, they completely changed the fact that the disease was airborne. So in the game, that is a huge change that you don't hear a lot of people crying about. You hear people crying about little minuscule changes in Wheel of Time, like, oh, so-and-so's character is too tall, or their hair doesn't look right. And we haven't even seen them in a wig yet. But in this one, they literally changed how the disease, which is the focal point of the show, is spread, and you almost hear nothing about it.
Because we wanted to see Pedro.
That's true.
We had to go through all those seasons of Mandalorian and not see him.
Basically, yeah.
That's true.
No, I mean, I think it's valid. Like I said, it's okay that a different art form is different. Like, what's wrong with that? And I get it how, it would change the dynamics of the game, and it would change the dynamics of, what people valued, et cetera, et cetera. But, I mean, it's what you have to do. It's the reality, whatever.
Yeah,
move on.
Exactly.
Yeah, no big deal.
No one wants to watch just people walking around in gas masks talking like Bane the whole time. Batman, how are you? What's going on here?
They absolutely don't. Yeah.
No one wants that. I do like, and I've said it a bunch of times, but I do like that they didn't make it like gore porn.
Mm-hmm. I'm thankful for that.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it doesn't bother me that much, but it just is so detractive from the show when it's so overly done. Like the later seasons of Game of Thrones, they just went crazy.
I mean, Game of Thrones was crazy just from the jump.
Well, that's fair.
I mean, all right. So it's funny because I will have people find out that I'm a nerd and that I like anime. And they're like, oh, you like the ones with the girls with the really, really massive tits, right? And I'm like, well, yeah, but not the ones you're thinking about, because then it's it ruins the anime part of it. Gotta have an insouciant zest. You gotta have a little salt bay of the gore and the sex and the everything. Otherwise, it's what's the point? Just turn on Pornhub. Move on with your life.
That's fair. You watch some La Blue Girl or something. I saw a thing a couple days ago. I don't remember the movie. It was an old school kung fu movie from back in the day. And it's where gore, like over-the-top gore in samurai movies and kung fu movies and anime started. And it was due to a mechanical failure in a blood, like, special effect. The two samurai were standing in front of each other, and they did the classic, like, both of them draw their sword and, like, shoot by each other. Mm-hmm. And when he hit him in the chest, it broke the tube that the blood was in, and it all sprayed out in one big spray. And then that just became a thing from then on. And it was like, that was like in the 50s or like the 40s. I can't remember the name of the movie.
Like, I mean, a great example of that too is Raiders of the Lost Ark. So you know the scene where like Indiana Jones is facing up against the guy with a giant scimitar and he does all this stuff and then Indiana Jones just shoots him? That's because Harrison Ford had diarrhea that day.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
I love that.
And it's one of the greatest scenes.
I love that for him. Yeah. It's the most iconic scene in the movie, and it's because he had dysentery from being in Iraq or wherever they were filming.
Yes. It is just an amazing scene. Like, why not?
But still, that was very in character, though, because the actual Indiana Jones would have done the same thing.
Would have done the same thing. But do we think that because the actual Indiana Jones did do the same thing, and then now that's part of the lore? Because it was the first movie.
It was the first movie.
Yeah.
And yes, so that helped build it. But one of the things I like most about Indiana Jones is that he never looks like he knows what he's doing. Like, he always looks surprised when things work out in the end. Mm-hmm. And he gets hurt. And I love that. I'm like, see, he's not a superhero. He's just a lucky archaeologist.
Just a lucky, dreamy archaeologist.
Oh, yeah. True. I love Harrison Ford, man. Even he's like 81 right now, and he's still fantastic looking.
And speaking of which, of oldies but goodies, you heard Al Pacino at 87 is about to have his next kid?
Yes, I did. Yes, with his 29-year-old girlfriend.
Yes, and Robert De Niro gave him a high five because he has like a 98-year-old kid or something like that. It's crazy.
So, yeah. I mean, they're no Nick Cannon, so.
That's fair. Yeah,
but he's young and he can afford it. I mean, it's not like Pacino can't afford it, but like when his kid can drive, he will literally be 100 years old.
Yeah.
Well, so here's the thing: he's old enough to know better. My issue with Nick Cannon is you're not hanging out with all those babies on a regular basis, and you keep having them in like the same year.
Why are you mad at Nick Cannon? Why are you mad at moms 6, 7, 8, 9?
No. So I'm mad at everybody.
They all can catch the smoke.
Yes, because you got a lot of explaining to do to your children. Also, I don't think Nick Cannon knows how expensive prom is and college and graduations all at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, tuition is not going to be fun. But hopefully by then he doesn't have to pay for it.
But also, he's going to be doing Masked Singer forever because he doesn't have a choice.
That's true. That's true. And what's that Snap show that he does?
Balling out.
He gets schooled all the time on that. I see him on that getting hit all the time.
All right, so we should talk about the show a little bit.
Yeah. So Melanie Linsky, I think her name is something like that. She's the leader of this group. She we were talking just before the show, another comedy actress who's fantastic at this serious role. Like we were talking about. So before this, we were talking about Barry with Bill Hader, and it's comedy, but there's a lot of serious in that too, and he does it great. Melanie is as Kathleen here. Mm-hmm. She gives like sociopath real well.
She does it great, and I feel like she is just. I mean, she obviously gives like kind of a soccer mom kind of vibe, but she's just like, I've had it. I'm just gonna straight up murder you guys. And I love how like they really sort of twisted like, well, who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy? What's the morality? And I feel like the overall point is that like, these are all just organisms that we call people that are afraid of these organisms called fungus, and that's pretty much interchangeable at the end of the day.
Yep. Yeah. And there hasn't been like a hard and fast villain, like everyone is just doing the best they can and looking out for their people. And then, sometimes they do some dark stuff to take care of the people that they identify as their people.
Yeah.
The only people that were bad so far are like the government that kind of got set up afterwards because they, were just straight up trying to make it like a dictatorship with capitalism still in effect.
See, but even that, it's like if society's falling apart, wouldn't you want the government to like declare martial law? I mean, imagine like the worst people that you know without any fear of law and order.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bad, but like literally the world is ending. So
yeah, I also feel like those people don't fear law and order now. Like there's some of those people that are living that life right now. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
So Al, you don't know this about me, but I wasn't real excited about this because these things are very much like zombies, and I have an irrational fear of zombies.
Irrational.
It's irrational because I know it's very well. First of all, I know how to kill them, so it's irrational. But also, it is very unlikely to happen.
Yeah, it's unlikely.
So I should not be as afraid as I am.
President. So
let me tell you, I as soon as he said he was running, I'm like, those people gonna vote for him because they tired, they sick and tired.
It's the whole thing.
Here's another comedic actor in this role too, John Getz, I think his name is. He always plays like funny people.
Mm-hmm. Wait, I don't think we're linked up. Which scene are you guys on?
We're 50. We're 9 minutes in, so 50.
Okay, a little behind.
906, 930.
All right, got it. Okay.
Yeah, something like that. So we just got to when Edelston or whatever his name is, Edelstein, I think. Let the boys in the attic. Yeah.
He's such a cute little boy.
He is a really cute little boy.
It's like the mom in me came out. I apologize.
I looked up. They really tried to pay attention to like I don't remember what the word is, but basically like he's deaf in real life to play this role, so they tried to find a child that would do that.
Good.
Yeah. But yeah, the man that's playing his older brother. Honestly, when I went through the episode again last night, he's the only one that has just like even really a shred of redeemability, including the main characters, because he's very clear. He's like, does that make me the bad guy? He's like, don't answer. I'm the bad guy because I did bad guy things. And it's as simple as that. We can rationalize everything, right? But if you're pushing an old lady off the like train platform, you did a bad guy thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you got to live with it.
Yep. And you got to own it. Yeah. Not just try to write it off and push it off on, it's her fault for being in the way or whatever. Yeah. I also like that they and I mentioned this last week, but they break the stereotype of making him like an angry black man, like or violent. Like he even like he says in the end of the last episode, as violent as I've ever been is aiming that unloaded gun at you. So like,
he's like, I'm just this like he's just kind of this like weak character that it's like, I did this thing and it was horrible and I betrayed everyone and I'm a horrible, horrible person. And I'm just trying to get out of this.
Yep.
No apologies. Yeah.
And the fact that he owned up to it was the part that I really enjoyed about his character. Mm-hmm. That's something that's been so like I want to say in media in the last 15 years or so, making the good characters more human and relatable, giving them flaws, and making the villains less villain, like, you know what I mean, like less.
They're not evil for the sake of evil. They have there's a reason that they think the way they think, and
they have depth.
Yes, you can see that their logic makes sense to them.
Yeah.
Right. Like
Loki did that amazingly.
Yeah. So yeah, but they all have very good points. But again, they took it too far. like you should have workshopped this with somebody. Workshop this idea.
No, but I agree. I think that what is it? After 9/11, they got rid of all dark stuff on TV because they're like, people need to cheer up, right? Prior to Obama getting elected, what happened? The most popular show on television, 24, had a black president for however long. Like, America follows what we see on TV. It doesn't follow science. It's sort of like an optional thing in this country. So like the idea that like we can normalize things is sort of what we're all about. And this sort of idea of like rationalizing what's good and what's evil is basically how most people feel. I mean, like I feel like a lot of Americans are like, well, there's a them and there's an us, but really, I just want to get drunk with my friends, watch a little Netflix, and get laid sometimes. I mean, I feel like that's all Americans, no matter what you're
Humans.
like. Yeah. And so this idea of like, well, no, it's not this like axis of evil. It's not this like, paragon of good, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. I mean, it's very much in keeping with the way our society is developing right now.
Yeah. And that's what I like about it. It's so it gives us something to do stuff like this, to talk about, to chew on and digest and theorize about and debate. Who's right, who's wrong. The biggest question, and since we've said this from the beginning, but full Last of Us spoilers. The question that everyone talked about for so long after the last episode of Last of Us was Joel right?
Mm-hmm.
And,
sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was actually leaving this at the end, but like basically, so we have all of these characters that are basically just doing what's best for themselves, and they're justifying it in various ways. Even the little kid, right? His sort of arc is he starts off drawing these like superheroes, and then he's like, hey, we're running out of food, go get food. And his brother's like, it's not safe. And he's like, we're running out of food, go get food. Even he is a selfish character, though it's hard for a child to do that. So it's almost like everyone in the episode is basically being a child, right? What happens at the end? The brother ends up doing the thing that he's been avoiding the whole time. I'm wondering if this episode is actually foreshadowing what happens in the next season, that the main character ends up doing what he should have done earlier with the smaller child. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's an interesting episode.
I like how it also, so it's going to add some trauma for Ellie too, because the question I think she's going to start to struggle with, especially in the next season, will be, was he infected before I put my blood inside of him? Like,
Yes,
was he truly
infected?
No,
he was bit. Yeah.
Yeah, he was bit.
But we've Tom's brought it up before. Like, is she a carrier? Like, does she have the disease that can infect people, but she herself is not infected?
Yeah.
And as a child, she's not going to rationalize it. She already has shown that she takes responsibility for things that obviously aren't her responsibility.
She's a 14-year-old girl, and I keep telling you, the puberty demons are also what she's dealing with right now, along with the end of the world. So,
I mean, as soon as she got laid, her girlfriend died. That's got to mess you up.
Oh,
so
God.
As soon as, just immediately. So, I don't know. I mean, like, going back to your question, like, what was right and what was wrong? I guess it really sort of comes down to is, if you think there's hope for the human race, they should have killed that girl. If you feel like, well, it's pretty much right out and we're going to restart, like, we're going to hit rock bottom, and if there's any humans left, we're just going to remake a civilization in a couple thousand years, then you shouldn't have. Then the personal bond is more important. Yep. Me personally, yeah. If I didn't have like the strongest bond, whatever, I'd be like, yeah, kill that girl. And we did a bad thing. We're bad guys. If it was somebody that I loved and cared about, and I lost everything like Joel did, yeah, I probably would have just killed everyone else. Like, what do I care? We talked about comparing the Joel Ellie moment there with Moiraine and Rand. Like, Moiraine marching Rand to his death is what she thinks. But also, would she have let him die on a chance? Like, if she doesn't know for sure this is the right move. See, I like psychological problems, but I hate virtue signaling, right? Like, I hate it when someone's like, hey, you can save every child in the world from dying of cancer if you kill this one kid. That was the kid that had the disease. What do you think now? And it's like, get the fuck out of here, man. Yeah, no. Like, you're going to let all these other children suffer because you don't have the balls to do, or the ovaries, much stronger, the one thing that you need to do.
They all used to be ovaries in the first place.
Yeah, right? Exactly. I think it's a bullshit kind of thing. We make hard decisions every day. Yeah. We limit liberties every time we drive under the speed limit. Most of us don't, but we know it's there. I don't know. It sort of depends. And also, I think that it's like, it's like, do you agree with the CIA existing? I certainly don't agree with almost all the things that we found out that they do.
Yeah.
But I also know that there's secret organizations that are technically my enemy because they just hate me because I'm an American.
Yeah.
And I'm not all star-spangled whatever, but I do believe there are bad people that need to be stopped from doing bad things in this country and out. And if you're not willing to do that, I don't know. I also just don't really agree with the idea of pacifism if you're hiding behind someone fighting for you. If you're really like, you know what? Just hit me again.
Yep.
Okay, you're ride or die about that. But if you're only doing it because somebody else took the hit, you're just a piece of shit.
Yeah, it takes a certain kind of person to be able to make those, to even be able to be in the room to make those decisions in the first place. And most people are not that person.
No, I mean, most people just don't have the wherewithal. Most people don't really care about anything outside of their individual sphere.
Yeah.
A lot of times. I mean, you can even see like how people vote in this country. They're generally a lot of times they're voting against their own interests just because they've been told that that's something they're supposed to do. So
yeah. The main thing that I thought about when comparing the two, because we talked about the hero's journey and how Joel is kind of the teacher or the what's it called, the
Gandalf.
He's Gandalf, but there's a term in the hero's journey thing, and I can't remember what it is. I'll shout it out in 5 minutes.
He will. He definitely will.
And we compared it to Moiraine, and she would be 100% okay with letting Rand die. It's my idea was, so like my wrench that I threw into it of saying like you can't know if it's the right or wrong decision is it wasn't for sure whether or not they would be able to cure the disease by killing her and tapping in her brain. Like they weren't sure it was going to work. So like now you've killed her and all chances are gone. That's the kind of like, that's why I was of the opinion that Moiraine would have did the same thing, because not for any love for Rand, but because she she wouldn't have done it if she wasn't sure, or as sure as she could be that it would have worked.
See, but I mean, then it's like, and I don't really think it's about like as sure as you could be, because it's like, okay, so I'm like, all right, so Moiraine, you have a 49% chance, and she's like, that's not enough, and I'm like, you have a 51% chance. She's like, oh, well, I'm in. It's like it's an arbitrary kind of thing.
Yeah.
The question is, are you willing to push the button to end someone's life for something you believe to be a greater good?
Moiraine, yes. Joel, no. That's where I was.
Well, I mean, but he did make that decision. He pushes the button on the whole human race to save her.
Yeah.
He still makes the decision.
Yeah.
And he actively makes it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see how he comes to terms with that. Like if he blames himself, if he blames Ellie, like he harbors some sort of resentment against Ellie, if he even if he accepts it, if he writes it off, if he ignores it, like it's going to be interesting to see how they play with that.
See, I actually think he's going to sleep like a baby. And the only problem is going to be when Ellie finds out.
Yeah.
I think he's been through so many iterations of loss. He's like, done. And now the only thing I have left living for is this little girl.
Yep.
Which is almost like also something that I was looking at. It's like
selfish.
So is it selfish? Is it like just like the collaborator guy that saves the little black kid? It's like, was he doing it to save his brother, or was he doing it to kill him, to save himself? Because as soon as his brother dies, he kills himself. I mean, you can look at it various ways, but honestly, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter outside of an esoteric philosophical question. It really just sort of matters. It's like, well, what would you do, and what could you live with?
And that's what I really enjoy about it, is like you can put yourself into almost any character here, and the decisions are like snap decisions. There's no like we said before, there's no definite right or wrong. There's no paragon of good or crazy villain. It's all just moments. Mm-hmm. And then how they affect the character afterwards. The fact that they actually explore the trauma is nice. Like that they make the characters have the wounds, both physical, psychological.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of I can't think of the word, but like instead of just disregarding like the drama, like, oh no, yeah, they're fine. They just were tortured for a month in a dark room and then came out of it being right as rain, no problem.
Same. They've been twisting this stuff like from the very beginning. I honestly feel like the best example of them sort of twisting morality was in the opener for the second episode, where the scientist gets picked up by the general guy, right? And she's like afraid that it's a secret police kind of thing. And at the end, the guy's like, "Well, you have to help us," and she's like, "No, just bomb everyone." And this hardcore 3-star general, who by reputation has just done the worst things we could think of, is horrified that this matron. I mean, it's like, yeah, you don't really know, you know, and it shifts it up. Yeah.
We talked about that during that episode too. That was rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was looking to her to hopefully see something like, no, here it is. And she was like,
she's like, nope.
Bomb
She's like, no.
everybody. Firebomb everybody. But also it's probably too late. It's also probably too late, though.
Yes.
Exactly. Could you wait 20 minutes so I can get home first? That would be, you'd be a mensch for doing that.
Yes. She wanted to at least die with her family. Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, I really believe that, like, if you just sort of look at like people, there's like these various orders of operation. So you can have a 0 order where it's like you only care about yourself, just the most selfish, whatever. And most human beings do not fit into this. They at least care about their tribe, whether it's their brother, whether it's somebody they serve with, whether it's the dude that they've been playing pinochle with. They care about someone right outside of
most
them,
people
right?
have a person. Most people have a person,
right? And so that's order 1, where it's like I care about me and mine. And then there's like order 2, where you care about like sort of your overall peripheral. It's like, well, I don't really like my cousin, but he's family, right? And then you can get order 3, where it's like you care about what the people that resemble your family, right? Like ethnic groups that are super, super tight are sort of like going down in sort of that category. And then you have like the 4th order, which is like you care about the concept that your family is supposed to embolden. And these are the people that we sort of like praise to a great extent, like Martin Luther King. Like he cared about equality as a concept. He extended for him specifically to all the Black people in America and those that are downtrodden. And then you have the 5th order, which we, make religions about. Mother Teresa, Jesus Christ, Buddha. And
do you think there are any of those people in any popular fantasy?
I think that they
forget about the real world.
Okay. I definitely think there are. I mean, like Superman is the greatest example of, he was sent to inspire us. Why doesn't Superman just take over? Why doesn't he stop the wars? Because what his real job isn't to save us from Lex Luthor. His real job is to inspire us to be better so that we stop making Lex Luthor. That was always sort of the point. That they sort of, dive more into that, like his father basically being like, if you don't turn them into better people, then they're just going to go the way of Krypton in 50,000 years. And what does it matter if they die today or in 50,000? Make them better. So, I mean, like, that's a sort of great example. Various arcs of like Batman as well will do that, right? Especially when he's first coming out and he's just like really trying to believe in anything. And Christian Bale had a great sequence in that when he's traveling the world and he says, the first time I stole food to eat, a lot of illusions were stripped away. Yeah. I mean, morality works when you have enough food. And it takes a lot to have it when there's not enough food.
Yep. And then where does morality actually lie?
And what is the purpose of it, right? I was thinking about this idea because I feel like it's a very popular thing these days that people are called selfish. It's like, oh, you're selfish because you are not volunteering enough, or oh, you're selfish because you could do much better than that senator, so why aren't you running for office? Oh, various things, right? And I'm like, self-love is not a bad thing. Selfishness, the way they talk about it, is bad. And what I really came up with is like, maybe selfishness is classically seen as a negative thing for the same reason we view most things are negative, that it's inherently self-destructive. So if you're committing an act that is ultimately going to be self-destructive, then that's going to fall into the selfish category. If you're committing an act that is, taking care of you, but it's not inherently self-destructive, then you're not. And I mean, self-destructive could be, if you only care about yourself, then you're going to be alone at the end of your life. That's an inherently self-destructive long-term kind of thing. But being like, I don't feel like getting up today, why don't we just hang in bed and watch TV? not a selfish person for doing that.
Yes.
But we like to throw it around, honestly, I think, because we like to manipulate people.
That's fair. And at least we're seeing that change a lot, especially COVID and what happened during it, and everyone kind of learning, to take care of themselves differently through that really opened up a lot of different avenues of talk that you didn't see before. Like, self-care is being one of them. Like, I care about my, and unwillingness to work for, pittances. So
yeah.
I like that. I mean, it sucks, everything that happened, but it's, I'm hoping that positive can come out of it with growth like that.
I mean, I think a lot of positives have already come out of it.
Yeah.
That we don't really need to dive too deep into, but think about what the trajectory of the world if it hadn't happened.
Yeah. Well, we talked about, like, in this, like, we saw, and it came up with COVID too. So, like, in this, we talked about how Ellie is going through puberty now at 14, 15. And we talked about how, like, oh, well, if she, like, if this was 2023 normal, she would be eating food with hormones, and she would have went through puberty when she was like 11. So how does it look with, like, better air quality, better food, better, stuff like that. But, and then the way that we tied that back with COVID was, it was the same thing. Like, all of a sudden we saw, like, because people weren't driving everywhere, like, the carbon dropped, and, like, all kinds of stuff, plummeted.
Smog over all of China went away after a week and a half.
Yeah.
And it just showed that it's utter BS when they're like, well, it's too late. It's
too
a
late.
week and a half of
it.
not actively screwing the planet for it to heal.
Yeah.
Like,
and people felt better.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And society didn't stop because everyone was home and got food delivered to their house, like, by the government in other countries and stuff.
I'm just going to say the one of the things I'm glad that came out of COVID was the proof that people can work remotely. There are many jobs where it is a struggle as a woman, and for some men too, but with children, especially when they are younger, daycare is real expensive. If I can be home a couple days a week and still do my job and maybe have a neighbor watch the kid at my house, as opposed to me having to get up, I don't know, half hour earlier to drop the kid off so I can drive into work. And then, the fact that I can work from home, and it's proven now, like that, there's no reason we could have been doing that before. The technology absolutely existed because it was a real quick switch over.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And we talked about how it showed, a lot of people that have disabilities and a lot of people that aren't able to go out for whatever reason. Not like, I have I can't afford daycare, which is a real thing that we need to fix. But, like, people that have disabilities were able to get jobs that they were never considered before. And then to flip that back to the show, when we talk about how precarious human life is, and that's the reason why we have the societies we have, is because we actually do care about people that can't survive without society. Like, how many people would die just because they can't get diabetes drugs, or because they can't, Ebony, Ebony and I have talked about this a lot. We're both nutrient deficient, anemic, but I, as a man, only need to get an infusion once every couple of years, or if I get injured. And
every 6 months.
Yeah, Ebony needs to get every 6 months. She would be dead if the apocalypse happened.
I mean, there's so many other reasons, but yes, there are medical reasons that it wouldn't happen. I'd be like, honey, take the kids. Use all that Air Force training. I'm gonna take a nap, and what happens?
No. They came out with something that you can, like, fix asthma a little bit, like, so you don't need, like, rescue inhalers all the time. And I told Erin, like, you got to get it done, my wife, because like, if the apocalypse happens and I got to murder somebody because they're smoking around you, I mean, I'll do it, but I don't really want to do it. So, like, can you please? But the procedure's, like, a little crazy, so I was really only half joking.
No, but I mean, it's right. Medical technology has taken us to the point where
that's why we stopped being hunter-gatherers.
But we're not fixing it.
Yeah.
And I think we all know that it's because there's a lot more money in treating it than fixing it.
Yes.
I mean,
we're starting to dial that the other way, hopefully more so, just because medical advances and stuff are so open now, or more open than they were in, like, the 50s, like, when people no one read medical journals. Well, now, like, a medical journal comes out, you hear about it tomorrow because the internet.
No, I mean, the last year, one of the main manufacturers of insulin made it generic, but they made it generic because there was a generic version coming live in a month.
Yep.
So, I mean, I personally feel like that's what government should be for, to stop unchecked
Capitalism.
anything that then becomes a problem that goes against the public good. But maybe it doesn't go against the public good, depending on how people view it.
Yeah, I always pictured the stuff with. Oh, there's Erin. She said no.
Hey, Erin.
I always picture it like with dials. Like we've just been dialed in one direction for too long. We got to turn the dials the other way, because not one hard and fast set of criteria doesn't work. You need to have a little bit from everything. Yeah.
The problem is who's turning the dials, who's watching.
Yes, that's and that's why we and just as long as if people voted more, and I would don't get started on that.
Yeah, but we'll do another show.
We'll do another. That's a panel for another time. I'll put that pin over there. This whole bit with her little paramilitary group is the part. This is the dark part that they add to her to make you not like her, like just a little bit more, because she they play with the morality of this character by being like, you know, her brother was killed and like he was trying to do the right thing and he was the good guy, and you know, she never wanted it to fall on her, and like blah blah blah. Like you can empathize with her, but then you see in a couple of scenes with her, specifically with this guy, she kind of likes the power.
I know, she loves the power.
Yeah.
And she doesn't give a crap about anything else.
Right.
And the only problem I have with this character is her just being like, I'm going to shoot you because I'm in charge. If it wasn't all this other song and dance, I'd be like, okay, yeah, you're a post-apocalyptic warlord. That's pretty par for the course.
Yeah.
Sure, I'm down with that. It's where you try to like justify it, where it's total.
Yeah.
That's the same thing that we talked about. Is you like own it.
So yes, I will say two things. I always say is a person who's decided they're fine with the consequences of their actions is the most dangerous person ever, because they've already decided that I know what's going to happen. I'm going to do it anyway. Like I'll deal with that. But also a person who has justified, that can always justify everything they've done and twist it. Like that's not. So yes, can you justify everything? Yeah, sure. You can come up with a reason that sounds good to you.
Yeah.
But you are not the end all be all. Even in this scenario, the end of the world, she's not the end all be all judgment, right? Because there's still other people, like they can turn on her at any point.
Yeah. But people, I do believe it's part of the nature of people to want to follow a leader. Like
it is. It absolutely is. It is.
It's just part of our pack mentality.
Yeah. I mean, I know I'm like that in everything. Like I don't like to be in charge of it. Like even like little things like projects at work. Like I don't want to be in charge. Like I work so much better when you just give me my stuff to do.
But that's because then you can focus on the task and not have to worry about all the other things that might influence the task.
That's true.
So yes, there absolutely there are people like that. I used to be more like that, and I got tired of people doing stuff wrong. But
that's also that. I mean, we you know.
Yes. But I will say, like I think the people who make the best leaders are also the people that can be a follower.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
who don't yearn for it too.
Right. If you are a leader that can follow without that chafing, then you're a good leader. But if you're always like, I should be in charge, be in charge, then you're not fit for either role.
That was always my thing too, is you need to be cognizant enough to know what you don't know, and then surround yourself with people who do.
Yeah.
Which is what a lot of the characters, like the good characters, do in all of the stuff that we take in now. Like you see, Perrin is one of my favorite examples of that in the Wheel of Time, because like he just adopts people that he respects, and that that not only that he respects, but he respects their decision making and their abilities, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna learn as much as I can from you. I'm gonna take what I can from you, and and protect you along the way as well. I mean, he's a little overprotective, but that's the type of leader that everyone needs, and that was what I was always afraid with the other guy, is that like the most dangerous thing about him was that he doesn't listen to anybody, even people that like you should know objectively know more than you about whatever the topic is they're talking about. Doctors, military generals.
Well, I have a theory about that, but we'll save that for later.
That's fair. But I mean, like to bring it back here, hold on, Arosa, what did Arosa? Joel and Kathleen are driven by love. Yes. So yes, that is. And Joel is very much.
That's not necessarily better. Like being driven by love.
No. I don't think they're saying that it's good.
Make anything better. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
because Kathleen is the bad person here.
Yeah.
Ellie is his balancing point, because Ellie kind of drives him to do the right thing. Like not forcefully, but at first, like he wants to do the easy way out with a lot of stuff. Like the best example is when this all started was, the people trying to set the trap for him. His initial reaction was to kill the person, just to run them over, like not even slow down. But then he looks at her like this in that scene, and then he stops. And then that's when they set the trap and he drives away. But he still drives around them. He doesn't even run them over, which is something like, I like the little drips and drabs of him trying to do the right thing, or to show her an example of the right thing, is what is the growth of his character throughout this whole thing. And then he reverts again at the end, which is, I can't wait I hope they play with that in season 2. I hope they play with it. Whether it's like you said, where he sleeps like a baby and then Ellie is the one that has to confront him on it, or he's troubled by it, and however the dichotomy works with that.
I mean, it definitely seems like, even starting at the end of this episode, that the adult-child dynamic really starts to shift, where she's almost the one leading, and he's just sort of this like wounded creature that he's a guard dog. That's what I can do. Yep. Don't ask anything else of me, please. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ellie opened up a lot of wounds he very obviously did not go to therapy to resolve. So
I suggest everyone try, by the way.
Yes, everybody should.
I never would have written my books without therapy. Yeah.
Everybody should. Like it
is necessary.
It is. It is self-care. Is what it is.
And there's nothing wrong with saying the world is bigger than I am. That's all you're really saying. And I need a little help with it. Yeah, it's simple. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's really important that you guys share that you go to therapy too, because it's still very taboo, even in 2023. But when someone's like, "Oh, well, you did it," then I can. Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things that my doctor talked about, was because I talked about a lot of it was feeling guilty about stuff. And they were like, well, something that you could do is someone that looks like you talking about going to therapy and having, having been assaulted and having been bullied as a kid and like stuff like that is a good thing to openly talk about if you're comfortable talking about it. So I've been working on that as well.
And you're doing a good job, Tom.
My therapist was like, "What's with all the guilt? Are you a Catholic Jew? Like, what's happening here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I have an Asian mom. It's kind of the same thing." But but no, I mean, like, I think like almost everyone that does work on themselves, they just sort of realize like, oh, a lot of these problems, they come from like really genuine places, but I'm the one doing this to me.
Yes.
Like, there's not anyone actively coming at me except me.
Right.
All the time.
Yeah. My biggest issue is I've got the should factor. I grew up around a lot of older Black women, and there were things that were implied that I should do. So I tend to be like, well, I should do that, so I'll do it.
I should do this. I do it. For me, it's like if you don't do it, then you're being selfish. Then you're doing whatever. It's the manipulations that, even if they come from love, even if they come from a good place, it's still not necessarily thinking like, let me take an objective look at this other human being's life and see if my advice is going to add anything. It's just sort of like either going by rote, or like what you're doing bothers me in some way and I have to stop it somehow.
Yep.
I mean, I think there's a lot of generational pain that all of us really carry around.
It is. And I will say, I don't think anybody ever actually said, well, maybe in some cases they said you should do this, but it was more in me watching their actions and learning that these are the things that you should do.
Oh, then you're lucky. I've always had that.
Yeah. So no, it was just a lot of things. I mean, I grew up in a very small town. very country, and there were certain things the women in the family should do to keep things going. There's certain things you should do for your family because they're family. Like if you are able to, then you should. But the key there is, am I really able to, or do I just think I'm able to?
Sure.
Here's your scene, by the way, that you talked about earlier. The him owning his not failure, but his decisions.
Yeah, his life choice. His life choices.
The I like tying it because you're right. Life imitates art in everything, and seeing it in our art, characters identifying faults in themselves and either working to fix them or removing themselves from positions where the flaws could damage other people is nice to finally see. I was always driven away from fantasy when I was younger, when it was very much like, the sword and shield, like paragon of good characters, because I never was able to identify with them. I always identified with the villains more, because the villains were always the more real characters until they started making them overtly like bad, like the Emperor in Star Wars. But I liked what they did with him in the books, where it was like, oh no, he like the theory was always he was preparing the galaxy to be able to handle this threat that was coming from outside the galaxy.
I just want to say this is terrifying. This right here, I don't like this at all.
No,
I mean, so like it's such a very on the nose, but also great scene that basically, like, the collaborator walks out, the sins of his past are coming to roost. And then what happens? The sins of their past, they try to bury, literally crawl the way up from where they've tried to bury them from a hellscape with fire. And it's just sort of like, it's not really a matter what your morality is. It's like, there's consequences to your actions. That's what's real.
And here are the consequences right now.
Here's the consequences. Yeah.
Very real ones. So I want to pay attention in the scene. I think it was Noman Garden. What's up, brother Zachariah? What's going on, man? Hanging out over in Twitch. Someone pointed out, I think it might have been Noman Garden, but that to see if the zombies or whatever, fungus
are ignoring her or not.
Yeah, ignore her at first or not. Or only pay attention to her after she gets kind of in the way of their food. Do they identify her as one of them?
I think we're really looking at some plot armor here, because she gets chased sometimes and she doesn't get other times. I think that was really just sort of gone on here. I mean, with the number of zombies running through, like, she should have gotten got by some of those zombies. There's a lot of zombies.
Yeah, but the theory is that because she is infected and she's carrying an active infection, that they would not attack. They would recognize her as one of them. But then in a second,
that little weird kid zombie's going to go after her. So what's the theory on that?
So I forgot. I think it was the guest that we had on when we talked about this that mentioned this, and I think it was Nerdy Nightly mentioned she didn't like the kid, and I want to check it too when it happens. The kid doesn't respond to her until she touches him. So, like, was he ignoring her because he was facing away from her?
No. The little monster.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
It's coming after her. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to watch so many episodes of Bob's Burgers tonight to sleep.
It's clearly coming after her. It's clawing to get at her. Yeah. So,
I don't like these gymnastics over this.
Was it after? Was it because she pushed the Henry and Sam out of the way and got in the way of the food, or?
No, I think that one seemed to be going straight. Like saw her in the car and was like, "Oh, nobody sees her. I'm little. Let me go get this one."
Either you're immune or you're not immune. I think, and like if they're zombies. They're not reasoning. They will respond to stimuli, but they're not going to ignore her for the first run and then come after her. I mean, I think it's fair. Fun stuff. Yeah. I don't know.
The thing I do like about this fungus zombie thing is that it's different than the trope of the zombie where they die and come back. Like these, they need living bodies to inhabit. I like that.
Yeah.
And all this, lady, let it go.
And yet they don't like when the fungus overtakes them though. They don't
maintain any.
Yeah, and you can get shot, and it doesn't really ever do anything.
No, yeah.
So that's sort of where it loses me a little bit.
Do they have do they live off photosynthesis now? Is that what it is? Like
what's the? And I mean, if they're really fungus, why wouldn't they not like the sunlight as much? Why wouldn't they act more fungusy and want to be in dark places?
Well, I mean, they've mutated. So maybe
I get it.
They mutated to survive. So my son just graduated with his degree in chemical engineering, and he was home the weekend. Thanks. Well, he was home and the other Mother's Day weekend, so he binge watched this.
1000% Nomengarden.
Yes, Nomengarden. I didn't like that.
It's reminiscent of the Exorcist girl walking down the stairs.
I don't like. Let's not talk about that either. Either way, my son was like, I really don't buy that they could not have made a vaccine because there are organisms now that exist that eat fungus. So he's like,
and we have antifungals.
Yeah, but then he started talking science at me, and I didn't know what he was talking about. So I was like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, see, you gotta willing suspension of disbelief, but that's why you don't double down hardcore on the science. You just say it's a mutation,
right?
And then move on. Let's move on with our lives.
Yeah. You know, I just like that they. It's not just and this is another thing that we talk about a lot is how they add the depth to stuff like this now, where in the 70s and then into the 80s and the 90s, none of this stuff had depth. It was just Superman is another great example. It's just because and then just another power pulls out of his ass and then there's the shift in the early 2000s where they started adding more depth to stories, and that doesn't make them better or worse. It's just that's the type of thing that we look for now.
And I mean, what is it? It's a literal written note in the latest script of Star Wars. It's and Emperor Palpatine is back somehow. That's it. That's the whole build. And
the whole build.
Why
clones?
Emperor is now back? Why?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I feel I feel like trying to explain some stuff makes it more fun. It takes you down kind of a fun rabbit hole that can sort of develop. Just don't paint yourself in the corner, but also just don't be so lazy that you just get a bunch of MacGuffins all the time.
Just enough to get people talking and to add a little bit of flavor to the mix. That's it.
Exactly.
You got to leave it open-ended, but you gotta aim them in a direction so that, like you said, it's not just a MacGuffin.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. In my main series, the planet's the size of Jupiter, but it's still roughly a 24-hour day. And I've just got all these people well, if you're looking at them, and I'm like, all right, calm it down, guys. Because of magic. Yeah. That's why.
Yeah, because magic.
Because that's why. I mean, move on.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, well, Ariel should be white because she's under the water. She should also be translucent and her eyes should be the size of my head. So.
Yeah. And I mean.
and you don't have any problem with Lord Trident over there shooting lightning out of his trident.
There's a great Family Guy where Lois is trying to get a merman to come, and he shows up with the top part of a fish and the bottom part of his legs, and she goes, I'm not into this. He's like, well, how do you think we were gonna have sex if I wasn't like this? So
well,
what do you want?
There's the Futurama episode where Atlanta has sunken and it's the lost city of Atlanta, and Fry meets up with a mermaid and they're going to get married and everything. And he's like, well, how are we going to do this? And she's like, well, I just lay my eggs and leave. And he goes running out. He's like, I want to go back to the surface world.
Oh, it's funny. Yeah, I don't know. It's fun to sort of poke around with it.
Sadly, some people don't grow out of that though.
Yeah. I don't know. It's one of the weird things about getting older, realizing that there aren't as many adults as you thought there were. They're just
nowhere near. So legal. There's a whole lot of legal adults.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of people that can buy alcohol legally. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I remember my wife said something hilarious that I never realized that I thought about too when I was a kid was, I remember the moment that I realized that cars weren't on tracks. People could control them. And I'm like, they just give people these things and they let them drive them?
I mean, honestly, sometimes I'm out there and I'm like, why is this not just a fiery ball all the time? Knowing what I know about an average human being.
Oh, yeah.
How are we doing this?
Yep.
Like, what is it? What's going on? And I mean, honestly, that was an example that came up to me earlier, where it's like we're talking about morality, we're talking about justification, we're talking about whatever. Like, we accept as a society there's going to be a certain number of deaths per day on the highways, and we've accepted that going fast is worth this thing, and we're just okay with it.
Yep.
We make those kind of judgment calls all the time that we're like, well, it's not that bad. And I mean, a much more horrible example is we are completely numb now to mass shootings because there's one day. We don't even talk about it anymore. Like, it's just something that we are like, well, this is just the way things are. Not cosmically. There's nothing in nature that says this has to be.
Yep.
You just come to accept it.
And there's perfect examples of where it doesn't happen.
Exactly. All over the fucking world.
Yeah, everywhere else.
Very Western. Everywhere else. Everywhere else. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. And what the long-term what are the buried things that we're doing that are climbing up? And we've seen it happen over the last several years. Fucking marching insurrectionists, drama. I mean, like everything. I mean, even COVID itself. You have enough people in a small room, some people are going to get sick.
Mm-hmm.
If the world is a room of a finite size, sooner or later there's going to be a lot of people in this room, and more people are going to get sick. I mean,
and they like
complicated concept.
And people and the general acceptance of it.
Yeah. Or even just the general denial of its existence.
Yeah.
Like in early COVID, when I was talking to a bunch of my friends that were still in the hospital, and they were like, the most common, by far, over 75%, last words of people that died of COVID, but it isn't real.
But it isn't real.
They died. And they died.
How many people, we talked about that in the first episode of this. How many people do you think were like, oh, the zombies aren't real, as their face is getting chewed off? How many people
right?
Yeah.
There was a comedian that was talking about it. It's like, yeah, that was always my criticism of The Walking Dead, because it's like, how would it happen? But like, we'd be like, well, I don't believe it. I mean, it's like, well, what about there's a zombie on the show? It's like, whoa, is he Mexican? Because I don't know.
Did he come over the southern border?
Yeah, exactly. It's just it's always some stupid rationalization. But honestly, I feel like that is actually a facet of our species. We generally prefer illusions to reality.
How long before they had a fungus party in a college or something?
I mean, really, right? I read this really amazing article one time where they were basically talking about, like, have you ever been frustrated that when you try to use simple logic, you're just not getting through to people? And everyone's like, yeah. And it's like, well, that's because you're not understanding the purpose of logic. You think logic is to get towards a more universal truth. Logic has evolved in us as a species so that we can create tribes easier to have an us and them. And that's why the first thing you learn is usually the hardest to let go of, because it was put there just so that you guys always say the same thing wherever you go on Sunday, or you root for the same team, or you do the same anything. Like, it's logic is not there to help us understand things. Logic is there so that we stop killing each other as much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we stopped being hunter-gatherers, was just because we slightly started caring about our elderly and didn't want them to die.
And we had a better option.
Yeah.
Right? Like we grains.
Yeah.
I saw a whole episode, I forget the name of the show, but it was about it's called Sacred Sites, I think. And like they found a site that they thought might be related to the Garden of Eden. And basically they think it's one of the first sites where nomads settled. And the reason they think that is because there was a festival. It seems like there was a festival that was held there all the time, but there was a lot of beer that was brewed. Mm-hmm. And you have to grow the barley for the beer. And so that's when they gave up the free Roman life.
Beer started human civilization. I love it.
Yeah. But that was pretty much the logic behind it, is they had to have this festival honoring their ancestors. Yes, Nomengard.
That is totally what you meant. You would really like Nomengard, and you would really like Aleron's book, by the way. There's some awesome gnomes in the book.
Gnomes rule.
They literally is the shtick. It's great.
Gnomes. There we go.
I have mine over there.
Yeah.
My wife got me my little Mist Village Mafia card too with the gnomes on it. I mean, coin. I love challenge coins though, so I'm a giant coin nerd.
I had an old history professor that just sort of pointed out. She's like, I can't prove this, but I will say that every early civilization, like thousands of years ago, had a naturally occurring form of caffeine that people ate.
Because being is hard.
Yeah.
There's a lot to do. You need the energy.
But if you have a little more energy, you're like, man, we've been eating our shit for a while. What if we didn't do that? And if you don't have the energy, you're just like, well, this shit's not that bad.
Yeah.
Which is basically the same society that we live in now.
And then most early traditional ceremony things had some form of mind-altering plant or fungus or whatever involved in it.
Because being human has always been hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been hard to do.
Yeah, that's another thing that I like to see in these things. Is always one of the first things people do is like, how do I make alcohol?
Yes. Yes. Alcohol and carbs. Everybody's got some fried dough.
That was how we discovered early like cleaning like bacteria out of water and stuff, was because they realized, like, the peasants in like England, well, or at least how white people discovered in England. I'm sure people elsewhere knew
we were already doing it. We were already doing it.
That if you boil water, you'll get the stuff that makes you sick out of it. But like, they were drinking beer and mead more than they were drinking water because the water was making them sick. And then someone was like, hey, it's probably because you boil it.
Mm-hmm.
But
we take a lot of credit for like, look at how we progress. It's always one nerd. It's one nerd that managed not to be burned up by whatever powers that be. And then they were like, this
I
is
say it every day, Noman Garden.
This is I mean, like, I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting where we are. I feel like, one of the only things that gives me hope is that, cosmically speaking, we're infants as far as our civilization goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the reason we keep fucking shit up is the same reason infants knock over fucking blocks.
We gotta learn.
We gotta learn.
Yep. That was one of my favorite things about Mass Effect. Was the they were kind of like all the other alien races that had, like, the Citadel and were of the galactic empire, not empire, but civilization, kind of knew about Earth and humans, but they were like, they're not ready yet. Give them another.
And I don't blame them. I don't blame them. We are not ready for guests. I can tell you that. We are not ready for guests.
No, we're specifically the cats that go on the counter and knock the cup off the counter just cause. That's us right now.
No,
it's one of the scariest love, death, and robots that the cats just take over, because we're not making it if the cats take over. Let's just be honest. Like, it's not happening.
No. They're like the most vicious, efficient killing machines in the world when given half a chance.
And also, they don't have time for our foolishness. Like, the cat that I live with in my house sometimes looks at me like, I don't have time for this.
Yeah. And then if I didn't depend on you for food.
See, so here's the thing: she is so picky. She has done hunger strikes where she will look at her food and look at us and just walk away. And I'm like, this is. And then Brian, my husband, with his little fool self, has this whole list of foods she likes and the ones she doesn't like and the ones he's tested. And I'm like, just turn her loose. Let her be outside for 24 hours. See what happens.
Yeah. No, I don't play that. Like, I love that, like, line from, like, Have Plenty, where this guy's, like, house sitting, like, this girl's house that he likes. And she goes, the cat's not chewing on your shoes, right? He goes, no, cats don't chew on things that you beat them with. And she goes, are you joking? He goes, no, that's a real fact. That's actually true. Yeah. I mean, like, I really like animals, but they're animals and I'm a human. And I didn't think that this was ever going to be a debatable topic with other people. But, like,
it's mostly like, you're responsible for these things. So, like, if you're going to take it, you got to be responsible.
Yeah, you got to take care of it. You got to whatever. But they're not as important as another human being. That
I know they're not supposed to. I know they're not supposed to be, but I would let a motherfucker die if I had to save my cat.
So that's different. That's different because you have an emotional attachment to your cat.
I do.
Some random person.
I know it's irrational and I know it's wrong, but I fully accept it. There are human beings that I would let die before I let my cat die.
Yes.
I mean, there's human beings that I would let die just because I didn't.
And that's the end of the sentence. Yeah, I was going to say that's the end of the sentence.
That's fair. That's fair.
really.
Yeah. It's mostly just the sentient level, but I do like the furry ones slightly more. I'm partial. What you call I'm sorry. I'm glad we talked through the heartbreaking part of that episode, because the kid that played Sam, Sam was the older brother, is an amazing actor, and he really sold that end part. Like he barely says anything before he kills himself, and you could see him break.
Yeah.
Oh,
that was
man.
the end of it.
That was a rough scene.
Yeah, I'm telling
like
you.
I said, I think he was the most redeemable character in that whole episode.
Yeah, he might be he's one of the most redeemable characters in the whole series. And him imprinting on Ellie is a really cool, not cool, but it's an important part of her journey.
Yeah. Because I feel like at the end, like, Pedro Pascal is burying the kid, and he's just doing it almost by like rote. Like, this is like the 95,000th grade that I've dealt. And then she walks up, she goes, "Yeah, you ready to go?" And she just doesn't have tears left. It's like it's the last of her innocence that died when that kid died.
But if you look at Joel's face, though, like he looks almost heartbroken, and it's not for the kid. Yeah, it's because he knows he couldn't protect her from that. It was one more thing he could not protect her from. And that's been his fear this whole time, that he could not protect her.
They're both, like you said, they're going in like opposite directions, where Joel is kind of softening back to a more emotionally dad, and she is hardening into what he was like kind of in episode 1. And then that's the journey, that's the interesting part of this journey for this first season, is both of their independent character development, and then seeing how they play with that in season 2 is going to be my favorite part of this. Because obviously crazy zombie apocalypse show, that's fun, like it's an interesting show to watch, but I really like that they added in the nuance of the really strong character development. And apparently, and I really got to try the game, because apparently the game does very well too with that. And I've heard a lot of people talk a lot of really good things about it, specifically Beth Doman,
yes,
who's a good friend of ours. Al, she's my sister from another mister, as we have been saying since we got drunk together on another stream that we did. She's going to be our guest next week.
Yay.
Yes. We started playing some video games together, and she also loves Last of Us too. She played Last of Us, and she's been one of the ones that's been like, "No, you got to play it. The writing is great, the gameplay is great, blah blah blah." So I want to give it a shot. But to remind everybody who's watching about our guest this week, it is author of one of my favorite series, The Land. What's the Chaos Seed? Is the Chaos Seed it's the Land?
So like the entire universe is the Labyrinth universe, and the Land Labyrinth is the first series, and then the second series is God's Eye, and the third series is going to be Omnimatch.
Right. Okay. So I read God's Eye. I've read all of the Land stuff so far, and I've kind of turned it into a little bit of a habit. When we go into the Land Pavilion at Disney, I kind of always send a picture. I'm like, because I can't resist. And then I end up inevitably, someone will be like, "Why are you taking a picture in front of this?" And then I tell them all about the book again. Random strangers, because that's how I bond with people. I just overly share about book series and television series.
There's worse ways to bond.
That's fair. But yeah, so go check out Aleron's book over at litrpg.com. Really just a lot of fun. If you like gaming, if you like fantasy, urban fantasy, and kind of like epic sword and shield fantasy as well, it's a really fun genre twisting of multiple different genres. I really like it a lot. It's also got very good representation in it. Obviously, I mean,
he's got good representation in him. So.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But also there's a lot of gay characters. There's openly pansexual, polyamorous characters. There's good, healthy relationships, unhealthy relationships. Like there's a lot of really interesting character development that all the characters kind of go through. I also like there's a character that plays with necromancy. That's a lot of fun too.
Yeah, it's good time.
Just leave the dead people
No,
alone.
thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Always. I mean, like, it's nice when I genuinely get to like enjoy some of my friends' stuff. Like, not that I really lie about it, because I don't. Like, I tell people when I'm like, but like, it's nice to be like, oh, Aleron's an awesome dude. Like, I met him. I met you at I think at Jordan Con or Conjuration 6-7 years. Yeah. And it's like, I genuinely enjoy you as a person, but you're the stuff that you produce is also great, man. And I really think other people should know about it.
I appreciate it, man. I really do. Thank you. And thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun.
Of course.
Absolutely, man. Anytime. And I'll let you know when we do more shows.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Thanks for coming and hanging out. So yeah, we'll see you next week with Beth. And I don't know if the Way of the Leaf guys are starting their reread of the next book tomorrow or not, but just check the social medias for more information on that. I also do another show when I'm in my felt form.
He's
you can see him back there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a first time reader Wheel of Time show. The Way of the Leaf. You can find him on YouTube and stuff. It's the first time reader. His name is Josh. Great dude. He's got a lot of fun ideas and theories and insights into the books. But you should check that out too. Anyway, I will see y'all next week.
Bye, guys.
Peace out.
See you guys. I see you.